Well, there you go, guys. I've been away from YouTube because I've moved to Australia. Now this is super exciting, means I've got all of the Australian tracks over here that I can go and drive and bring the camera along with me to show you guys them as well. I'm hoping that it's going to give you a New Zealander's perspective on the level of difficulty of these tracks. It'll allow me to compare them to all of the tracks that I've done back home that hopefully most of my audience is familiar with, and just hopefully give you an idea of how difficult they actually are and what they're most similar to. In the meantime though, I have both a new 4-wheel drive and a new shed to work in, so I'll show both of them to you, starting with the shed. Welcome to my shed. Let's take a look around. So to start with the really obvious thing, I'm standing in a vehicle inspection pit, which is awesome. It's the first workshop I've ever been in that actually has one, so I'm really excited to get the truck in here and see how it goes. It seems to be a really nice height. My head's obviously basically level with the ground, which is here at the bottom of the screen. So it should be a really nice height for reaching up and working on the vehicle. It also has this other awesome feature of having a power point built into the wall of the pit, which will be great for running power tools off. But with that being said, let's go take a proper look around. Alrighty, first things first, welcome to the shed, which you can't really see behind me because it's quite dark, but as soon as we come on inside and out of the sunlight, we can see it in its entirety. As you can see, I've chucked the lid back on the pit because falling into that would not be particularly smart and would make me look rather silly on camera, so we won't be having that. But this is the main area. Nice big roller door behind me to allow the vehicle to drive in. And with it parked here, this gives me the whole other side with space for working, as you can see by the project I currently have on the go. We will touch on that later. But first thing is a nice big workbench. It is a really nice height for working at. It's nice and sturdy, was built by the previous tenant of this house, who I have spoken to. And this I will eventually turn into a shadow board. That was semi a shadow board when I got here. Had about 2 or 3 tool outlines on it. So I've just painted it all up, and eventually I'll get some stencils on there for all of my hand tools. So that will be nice and cool. I also have plans for building another bench along this wall here. A bit of extra bench space seems like a good idea, and I would like to have a metal top bench because I do have plans of getting myself a welder. I've never actually welded before in any real capacity other than a couple of little bits and pieces, and I think it'd be really cool to teach myself how to do some bar work, which I will be talking about later. As well as just being a really cool skill to have in general. So extra bench with potentially a metal top will be coming along there at some point. If I do that, I'll chuck some additional lights under that shelf because light above a workspace is worth its weight in gold. As for the rest of the space, air compressor will probably live in that corner. Compressed air, don't really have to say anything about it other than it's really useful to have. And as far as plans for building in the space, that is really all I'm thinking that I'm going to be changing. Other than that, it's a pretty nice layout. If we duck through this door over here, we have a whole second room, which is really echoey. So I won't stand in there and talk, but all that's in there currently is a desk with a whole bunch of spare parts on it that came with the truck, which is the exact same story as all of this down here. A spare axle, and a couple of spare bits and pieces over there. Bonus points if you can guess which truck I'm talking about based off the parts that you've just seen. But anyway, what else have I got going on in the shed? Couple of cabinets behind me. It's not particularly exciting, but I'll show you anyway. It's a cabinet. It's got storage in it. Same story with this one, although that locks, so it will probably end up with power tools in it. That is one of the annoying things about moving to a new country, is I don't have any power tools. Moving over in suitcases, you have a weight limit. So all I was able to bring with me was my socket set, my set of spanners, and a handful of screwdrivers, Allen keys, pliers, little bits and pieces like that. So I am slowly building up my collection of tools again. As you can see over in the corner, I do have a few little interesting bits and pieces. I've got myself a bench grinder, I've got myself a drop saw, and I've got myself a pipe bender. Because like I said, there will be bar work in the future on the channel. But that will come at some point. Need to get myself an angle grinder and other bits and pieces like that first. So we're just taking things nice and slowly for the time being. Other than that, Facebook Marketplace has blessed me with a little wee tool chest. Doesn't have any tools in it sadly, but it was $100, so that would be nice and useful for wheeling around. Over here we have got, again, bin, storage, thrilling stuff I know. These are a whole bunch of lights that came on the truck that I bought. They were on the roof rack, but I have taken them off because I did not want the roof rack. Awning also came with the truck, so Tourer lifestyle is incoming. So talking about this bench and the previous tenant of this property and shed leads me into my next point, being that you won't be seeing the standard crew on the channel anymore. However, I have met a couple of people over here in Roxby, the previous tenant of the shed being one of them, who are into their four-wheel drives. So I'm guessing that at some point you will start to see some new faces on the channel as I go out for adventures with those guys. Being local, they know their way around, so I'm sure they'll be willing to take me out to see a few spots, and I'll bring you guys along with me. But as you can see, the shed is no stranger to having four-wheel drives in it. But with that being said, I feel like I've danced around the issue long enough. Obviously, one of the first things I did when I got to Australia was buy myself a four-wheel drive. So I'll bring it in and show you what I've got. So there we go guys, I've gone and bought myself a long wheelbase GQ Safari. Yes, I am aware that it is technically a patrol, but back in New Zealand we call them safaris, or SAFs for short, so that's just what I'm going to be saying most of the time because that's what I've grown up using. Just like my Australian viewers are going to have to get used to the fact that I'm calling my footwear jandals and won't be advertising the fact that I walk around wearing thongs. So, moving on to the truck. What can I tell you about it? It is pretty much stock, as you can see. It has spent most of its life towing a caravan around. Not the previous owner, but the previous owner before that. Has done a few mods to it towards that purpose. So it does have a set of heavy duty springs in it. I think it's probably lifted it an inch or two. It's definitely firmed up the ride. I can tell that when I go over speed bumps and get my teeth shaken out. Other than that, it has a twin battery setup, which I will show you when I pop the hood, as well as an aerial and a draw system in the back. But other than that, it's very much a stock vehicle, and it hasn't seen an awful lot of off-road use. Like I said, it's pretty much just towed a caravan around, and that is one of the reasons I was tempted to buy this vehicle in particular. It's got reasonably high Ks, I think it's close to 400,000 from memory, but it doesn't have any mud underneath it up in silly places, as you'd see in a vehicle that spent a lot of time off-road. It doesn't have any rust, and the previous owner, who I bought it off, was a Nissan mechanic. So it's actually been relatively looked after, which is quite nice, and gives me a reasonable amount of confidence that it won't break down on me. So let's go take a closer look. So hiding under the bonnet, we have a TB42E. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Nissan engine codes, that is an inline-six 4.2 litre petrol engine. So a lot of these vehicles are diesel, but they're a lot more expensive, and so I went for a petrol. You can also see, like I mentioned, we have a dual battery setup, and we also have a custom airbox with pod filter connected to a snorkel. Fairly standard stuff, but it's nice that it's already done to the car and I don't have to do it. Other than that, there's not an awful lot to tell you about the engine bay. There's quite a lot of wiring going on. I suspect that most of that is to do with the additional gauges that are in the cab, which we may take a look at in the future. But yeah, fairly standard under the bonnet. We'll move on to the next part of the car. Alright, if we take a look inside, the first thing we're going to notice is that it is a manual. In terms of off-roading, I would generally prefer an automatic. I've driven both a manual and an auto off-road, and I find that the control the auto gives you in tough four-wheel driving is just a large benefit. However, in terms of a general vehicle, I just prefer driving a manual, and so the fact that this one is a manual doesn't bother me too much. But anyway, moving around to the back, this is what we've got going on, which is just a fairly basic drawer system. 2 large drawers, good for storing stuff, and these sides do pop up as well for additional storage. Other than that, these bits of plywood are something that I added in there just so that we could sleep in the back when we go away. The only other things I need to mention are that firstly, I forgot to tell you that it's got extra lights on the front, which you no doubt would have seen and noticed already. Kangaroos are a pretty big issue out here in the outback if you're driving in dusk or pre-dawn, so having those extra lights is really nice. It's certainly helped me spot a few kangaroos so far, because crashing into one of those wouldn't do the front of my truck any good and would definitely not be nice to the kangaroo. The final thing is, if we get down on the ground and have a wee look, if my camera will focus, which there's no guarantees of it, under there is a long-range fuel tank. Now, it's got a kind of weird fuel situation going on. It was originally petrol, the main tank was pulled out to convert it to LPG, they then put a sub-tank in so they could have dual fuel, but subsequently the LPG has been ripped out and it now only has an auxiliary tank. So, that's kind of weird, something that I'm probably going to change, chuck in a factory tank again, and run dual petrol tanks, which should give me a reasonable amount of range. But that is talk for future episodes. So now that I've showed you what the truck is and how it's sitting as I've bought it, we'll cut back to me in the shed. And there we go, guys. Some of you might have guessed it already, but I've gone and bought myself a Safari. So there you go. It's pretty bone stock. Long wheelbase SAF with a petrol engine. I know that's going to be a wee bit upsetting to those of you watching who are diesel fans, but no turbo diesel noises on this channel for the moment, sorry. It is the TB42E, which means electronic fuel injection, no carburetor. It does mean I have a distributor, so all of my experience driving Land Rovers and being around Tim's Land Rover should stand me in pretty good stead for keeping this thing alive during water crossings. I know there aren't exactly many of them out in the desert, but I'll find some eventually, so keeping my Dizzy waterproof will definitely be beneficial. But anyway, here she is. What to do? What to do? So many options available, really. Bar work is definitely going to be something that's on the list, as you've probably guessed by the tools that I've displayed in the background. Living out here in Roxby, there's not an awful lot to do, so I imagine I'm going to be spending a reasonable amount of time in this shed, so some bar work will definitely be on the cards. The front bar is definitely something that's going to change. That alloy one isn't particularly strong, it's quite loose how it fits to the vehicle, and it is already bent, and I feel like a steel bar that can actually hold a winch is going to be something that I'm definitely interested in. So, if you guys have any ideas of how you want it to look, if there's any bar work that you've seen on trucks that you think looks really sharp, fire in my direction. I'll leave a link to my Instagram somewhere, whether it's on screen up here somewhere or in the comments. Shoot me a message, shoot me a photo of what you think will look good, and I'll run through them. I've got some ideas of my own, but outside input is always appreciated, because You guys are going to be looking at it just as much as I am, so may as well make it look good. In addition to that, it'll probably get some rock sliders. I also need to work out what I'm doing with the fuel tank, because I don't think I mentioned it, but it's got an auxiliary tank in it. It hangs down quite a long way, so some underbody protection is definitely on the cards as well, because ripping my fuel tank open in the middle of nowhere would not be conducive to me getting home. But yeah, like I said, bar work will be happening. Send me ideas. If there's any other ideas you have on what you'd like to see to the truck, see me do to the truck rather, again, fire them my way. It's kind of a blank canvas right now, so we're open to suggestions. What size tyres should I run? Which type of tyres and brand should I run? How much lift should I have in it? Should I do things to the motor? Should I put a roll cage in it? Many and varied options lie before me, so we'll see where we end up. A couple of things that we do need to remember is that it will be a tourer. It will have an awning, it will have a rooftop tent, and I'm going to have to travel quite a long way to get to any hard wheeling, so I don't think I'll be running a set of Silverstones, because I won't have any tread left by the time I get to the hard tracks. So unfortunately, it's not going to be built to the same level as the race truck or the other winch challenge trucks you've seen on the channel before. So expectations will have to be brought down a notch to what it's going to be. But there's no reason we can't have fun in it. And there we go. Truck's back out of the shed to give myself some room to move around. But that pretty much brings us to the end of today's video. Not an awful lot more to talk about. Fairly big news regarding moving a country and having a new vehicle and a new shed to play with. But in terms of actually doing stuff with the vehicle, you will see all of that in upcoming videos. So, if you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure you leave it a like. If you have any suggestions at all regarding the shed, the truck, tracks you want me to do in Australia, because there are plenty of those that I know about, but I'm sure there are plenty of them that I do not know about. So if there's any you want me to tackle, let me know. All of the above that I just mentioned, biff it in the comments, or flick me a message on Instagram if you'd prefer. Like I said, I'll try and get the link in somehow. If not, it'll just be in the comments. But yeah, shoot me a comment, shoot me a message letting me know what you think. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, because there is a whole bunch of stuff coming up, I'm sure, that will be very exciting. And with that being said, we'll see you out.
Big regrets. You're a wanker.